just going to make the most of it. I'm going to be speaking on leadership and thought dynamics. And I'll show you 3 principles that can bring a revolution to your world. The truth is, every one of us carries potential. We are loaded with potential that is supposed to be translated into solutions that determine how rewards flow into our lives. Nobody pays you for what potential you have. Nobody pays you for what you know. People pay you for what you're able to do with what you know, and people pay you for your capacity to convert your potential to solutions that solve specific problems in a specific way so that rewards can flow back to you. Now, what's the relationship between leadership and our thought patterns? Let's establish a few facts, and I'll make a couple statements within the time frame that I have, and I'm hoping that there's something we can start a journey in your life. We can get you on a path where you think differently and where you can engage other things after this conference that will keep moving you forward. I hate stagnation. I like to see myself move. I like success that is measurable. I like to move from a point A to a point B. I like to be able to measure what the characteristics of my point A are and to know when I have moved. I hate assumptions because sometimes people think they have moved when nothing really has happened. Sometimes people think they have made progress when all that happened was just a vibration. You can vibrate on the same position and nothing really has changed. Okay, so let's establish a few facts. Every one of us is a product of our thought patterns. And I would borrow, first of all, from the big book. Now, I am a PhD student in psychology. I also have read very widely in many different fields. I have a background in the sciences. I have another background in education. And so I have read from many different fields. But I will tell you very frankly that there are statements in the Bible that agree with science, agree with psychology, agree on many different fronts. And one of them today that I'm going to use as my basis is Proverbs 23 and verse 7. It says, as a man thinketh, so is he. As a man thinketh. And that's all I'm going to say. As a man thinketh. It's not important that you think. What's more important is how you think. The truth is, many people think, but not many people think about how they think. Now, I have done a research on myself, and I encourage you to do one on yourself, to ask yourself, how do I think? Because we maintain status quo when our thoughts remain just as they have been. The mind will think whether you make it think or not. But you see, the mind was supposed to be programmed to think in a preferred manner, and unless you make the mind produce the results that you want, the mind will produce results. Just the challenge is that it may not be results that you're very proud of. So it's not enough that you think. Ask yourself, how do I think? How do I think? If I am limited by my thought processes, then I should be able to study how my mind works. I should know where my mind is at on the chart, on a scale of 1 to 10. Where does my mind function? How does my mind function? How do I reason? Because behavior comes out of thought patterns, ideas come out of thought patterns, eventually results come out of thought patterns. Every great achievement once existed as the seed of an idea. Every chicken was once an egg. Every human once existed in a seed called a sperm. So everything really begins from the quality of our thoughts. We cannot become great, we can't express greatness beyond the quality of the seed of our thoughts. What do I do to my thinking? How do I transform my thinking? How do I move my thinking from one level to another? As a matter of fact, we can be personified by our minds, our thinking. Like when you want to gather lawyers together, you can say, well, my plan is to gather the best legal minds in our state. So you see, people can be referred to as minds. Every person you meet is a mind. Everyone you meet is a mind. And so I am a mind. When you read my book, you are actually reading my mind. You're getting a piece of my mind. I am not, I am valuable to the extent to which my mind is valuable. I can't be more valuable than the value I have imputed in my mind. Get this fact straight. I am, or I will function at the level of my mind's thinking processes. I must understand how I think. 10% of the world think, 15% think they're thinking, but 80% would rather die than think. I heard this many years ago as a young man, and it's still true today. I believe that's why between 2 to 5%, it's just between 2 to 5% of people who rule the economy of the world. Where do you fit in? Are you in the 5% who truly think? Are you in the 15% who think they are thinking but are not? Or are you in the 80% who will rather die than think? Don't just exist and let your mind run wild. Make it do something. Give your mind work. Give it direction. Program it to deliver the results that you want. Program your mind to deliver the results that you want. Les Brown said something many years ago, and he said the moment you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are. I believe that the moment you open your mouth, you actually expose to the world where you stand in thought and in value. The opening of your mouth can either lead to a corresponding opening of doors or can initiate a closing of doors, because your mouth reveals the quality of what you carry. Okay, now but look at this. Every thought is a silent word, and every word is a spoken thought. So if when I open my mouth, I tell the world who I am, I tell the world where I stand, and if at the opening of my mouth I determine whether opportunities open with it or doors close as a reaction to what I have said, then it means that my mouth is important. But my mouth feeds from my mind, because every word is a spoken thought. Every thought is a silent word, and every word is a spoken thought. So my thoughts are the background upon which my mouth speaks. My thoughts feed my mouth. You see, out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. So whatever you fill your mind with, your mouth will expose. I learned from my mentor in my teenage years that knowledge provokes thought and thought provokes action, and I added when I grew up that actions determine results. So if you want to change your results, you have to start asking yourself, what have I been feeding from? You know, what have I been feeding from? There are people who don't read. There are people who hate to read. There are people who think it's burdensome, it's cumbersome. But in my research and in my relationship with people who are high flyers and people who have achieved many great things in a sustainable manner, I realize that there are people who really read. One of my mentors, who at the time when he was still alive, he was everywhere around the globe, everywhere, very busy speaking itinerary. He was a great man. But this man, for him, he would read an average of a minimum of 4 books every month. 4 books every month. I've been lazy at my reading this year, really, really lazy, but I'm getting close to 30, because you cannot function on a scale that will attract attention, on a scale that can solve problems in different societies, if you are not intentional about building the weight of your value. Value is not what somebody else gives to you. Value is what you intentionally build through an investment into quality information and relevant knowledge. I also learned many years ago that leaders are readers. So if leaders are readers, it means that leaders are simply people who empower their thoughts with relevant information and create ideas that rule the world. You must have heard that ideas rule the world. It's not every kind of idea that rules the world. Listen, small minds don't conceive great ideas. So the kinds of ideas that would attract the attention of nations, organizations, institutions will be ideas that have been well conceived, ideas that have been properly developed, ideas that can solve problems on a very high scale.
So you can prepare yourself to generate ideas. You can prepare yourself to be someone whose comments cannot be ignored. You can prepare yourself to be someone who is a solution distributor. You can prepare yourself to be that kind of person. Again, it starts with your information. What kinds of books do you read? If you're going to take the lead, then you should be able to read books that others aren't willing to read. You should be able to, look for information that others aren't willing to go the extra mile to get. What have you been doing with your time? This is October 2022. How many books have you read? How many articles about the people who have succeeded in what you want to do have you studied? How many researches have you done? You have to be intentional if you're going to move your life from point A to point B. You're not ready for where you're going if you don't have the mental capacity to govern, to produce, to develop, and to synthesize ideas on the level where you want to function. It's easy to wish to be somewhere, but it's another to have the capacity to function where you desire to be. We become something and then we attract it. You see, the law of desire states that we conceive of a preferred destination, right? So we can start the process of moving from our current location. But look, it's not enough to just desire. You must build the capacity that resembles where you're going, then you begin to attract that desired destination. So success begins from the inside out. If you don't become it, you can't attract it. Become the person who can attract who you desire. Become the person who can attract the success that you want. As a young man, I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to travel the globe. I knew I had the potential. I knew I had it. But I gave myself the task of building the capacity. Dreams die when they are not met with the proportional capacity to run them. Dreams are like a software that needs to run, but you need the capacity to drive it. Stop trying to drive a 5 horsepower AC with a 2 kVA generator. There are generating sets that can only give light, maybe 7 light bulbs, and that's all, 1 transistor radio, and maybe something else. But there are generating sets that can power a complex, an entire complex. Now, so you desire to power a complex, and what you have is a generating set that can put on 5 light bulbs. Now it's your responsibility to build the capacity, build the power within yourself that can drive what you desire. Back to our thoughts. E.W. Kenyon said, and I'm going to read, he said, make your brain work. It will sweat, but it will improve. It will improve until you become the envy of those around. Make your brain sweat, or make your brain work. Make your brain work. It will sweat. It will improve until you become the envy of those around. It will improve until you become the envy of those around. Make that brain sweat. Make it think. Think until you know you are thinking. Think until you catch yourself thinking. I think for a living. If you don't know what my profession is, that's one thing you can say. I mean, there are many things I could say, but that's one short thing. I think for a living. I think for a living. Out of those thoughts have come books that sell around the world. Out of those thoughts have come ideas that have served organizations across the globe. Out of those thoughts, you see, your thoughts always represent your value before the people, the value of your thoughts. And so you must spend a lot of time to invest quality information into your thinking. I don't do soft sell magazines. I don't do those kind of things because I don't have time to waste. I don't know how you look at yourself, but I look at myself as a highly priced commodity. I look at myself as the lifeline for nations, kings, organizations. That's how I see myself. Now, you have a right to look at yourself the way you wish. That's how I see myself. And that has also led me to developing the kinds of habits that will enable me build the capacity to deliver on that mental picture that I have of myself. Let me tell you, your habits will never improve until you improve the way you think about yourself. If you keep thinking you're just some guy living in the South Side, just some guy who's just existing or trying to there's not so much you're going to do with yourself. You see, you have to reconfigure your self-concept. Think differently about yourself. Imagine that one day people are going to look for you from all around the world. Now, when you begin to think those thoughts, there's a tendency that you will tilt towards a direction where you are generating the value to be that person that you see. So your self-image will always be the blueprint that enables your preparation for where you prefer to be in your life. A few more things. I still have a couple minutes here. So program your mind to function. Plutarch was a great sage. And one thing he said that has lived with me is, he said, the most fertile soil left uncultivated will breed the rankest weeds. The most fertile soil left uncultivated will breed the rankest weeds. And he was actually referring to the mind. So the mind is there, it's got great potential. There are so many things that can happen. But if you don't feed it, if you don't program it to function, then it's going to be the devil's workshop. Right? You have to give your mind work to do. You have to teach your mind what to think. You have to show your mind the direction to go. Create the enabling environment for your mind to generate the kinds of ideas that can make you stand out. The ideas that when you open your mouth, people want to ask, where are you from? Can you do something for us? Can you solve problems for us? You're the kind of person that we are looking for. Let me be a bit more specific here, and I believe I'm going to help someone. You don't need to be big to think big. You think big to engage the process to becoming big, right? Imagine that one day you'll be a counselor to presidents. And if you were, what kind of wisdom should you have? Imagine that one day you're going to sit with, members of parliament, congressmen, senators from different countries, and you will be able to provide solutions to problems in their constituencies or something. What kind of mind do you think you should have to enable that? There was a time when sitting with dignitaries was a dream of the young boy. But now it's not. Because from mayors of city, as a matter of fact, I have a friend who was mayor, and every time I wanted him to write a letter about something, he wouldn't read it. And I was bothered. He just gets his secretary to type it and he signs it. So I said to him, read this letter. He said, no, if you wrote it, I'm not reading it. I said, I appreciate that, but you still need to read it. He said, nope, if you wrote it, I'm not reading it. I don't know what that means to you, but that is something. Build the capacity of your mind to where you can solve problems for people in different walks of life. Now, think about it. What kinds of people do you want to solve problems for? And then ask yourself, what kind of mind do I need to have to enable that? How do I shift my mind? In closing, sit with great minds. Physics teaches us about the law of induction, where if you take a metal that has magnetic potential but doesn't behave like a magnet and bring it into a force field, a magnetic force field, and keep it there for some time, when you separate this metal from the force field, the potential in this magnet is released and it actually begins to behave like a magnet. Okay, now, so every person you meet is a mind, and you must be wise enough to decipher the power of their force field, the nature of their force field. By that I mean, you should ask yourself, what kind of influence am I going to be attracting to myself if I spent 10 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours with this kind of person? So you choose your influence, right? And then you determine the person who represents that influence, and you actively engage them. Because iron sharpens iron, isn't it? You actively engage them. You stay within their force field. And by staying in their force field, one, you're either communicating with them directly, or you're reading their books. Like I said, every time you open a book, you're opening the piece of a mind, because every word is a spoken thought. Every word is a spoken thought. You're opening the piece of someone's mind. So when you fellowship with a book, you have actually fellowshipped with the mind that scripted that book. Stay with great minds. Stay with great minds. I realize that the longer you stay with certain kinds of minds, you begin to see things just the way they see them. You begin to understand the way they understand. So spend time with great minds. Don't say, I can't read. Don't say, reading is boring. Force yourself to read. Force yourself to read. Force yourself to read. Begin to decipher between wisdom and foolishness. Wisdom is the ability to decipher difference. Some people cannot decipher difference. They don't know what's wisdom. They don't know what's foolishness. So decipher between wisdom and foolishness and stick with wisdom. Then spend time to think. Spend time to process your ideas. All right? Ask yourself questions and literally get out a sheet of paper and write as you think and crunch on those thoughts. That's one way to develop your mind. So fellowshipping with greater minds, either through active personal conversation or reading their books or something, doing researches. And then I said, spend time with yourself. Ask yourself questions and try to write. Let me give you samples of questions you can ask yourself. Who am I? Why am I here? What's the economic significance of my presence? What would the world lack if I wasn't born? How do I think? Where am I going the next 5 years? What's my target? What kind of person do I want to be? What am I incubating on my inside? What seeds have I sown into my mind? My mind is a field and I need to cultivate it. What kinds of books am I reading? What kinds of people speak to the greatness hidden on my inside? What kind of wisdom can unlock what I carry on the inside? Lastly, good evening.
Boy, I need leadership and man. Boy, I need leadership and man.